Welcome to the clinical cookout. You know you need it, it's kinda scary, but mental health is necessary. Four educated queens taking the lead, hold their hands and they'll help you succeed. Lay your head back, relax, just like that. Now listen to, learn, and your problems will burn away. Cookout, you know, we got just what you need. At the cookout, your heart and mind we will be. At the cookout.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. We are qualified clinicians who will cover various topics on mental health and will sometimes provide community resources. We are not being paid by any organization for our content, and any information we provide is general and pertains to our own personal experiences. We do not provide psychotherapy, diagnoses, or treatment recommendations on air. Any concerns related to your individual mental health should be directed to your medical and mental health professionals. We are not responsible for others' decisions or the subsequent consequences.
All right, hey y'all, welcome back to the Clinical Cookout. This week our theme is about intimacy, and we got a really good hot sauce for y'all, so let's go and get into it.
Our hot sauce is when we talk about trending topics and we relate them to mental health. Let's get it.
All right, y'all, so we got a really good hot sauce for y'all today in regards to intimacy, and the question is, if there are intimacy issues between you and your partner, are you willing to teach them, or do you want somebody to come in already knowing all things, an expert? Are you a teachable person? Would you be offended if your partner tried to, tell you need to work on this, or maybe we could do this, or like, how would you feel? So basically, are you teachable? Do you want a partner that already knows everything, or somebody that you have to teach? Are you comfortable teaching? All around teaching your partner about intimacy and what works for you.
I think something that would be helpful for us to answer this question is defining what intimacy is, because some people automatically go straight to sex.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be a different answer if they're thinking more of like emotional intimacy rather than physical.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So there are various types of intimacy. You do have, of course, sexual intimacy is the first thing everybody goes to. And that's also what people think of when they talk about teaching their partner. Like, I got to teach you how to please me. But there's also emotional intimacy. Like, do you have to teach your partner how to love you? Do you have to teach them how you need support? Because everybody needs support differently. There's also intellectual intimacy. Do you want to be with somebody that can't hold an intellectual conversation with you, or does that intellect turn you on? So there's just a lot that goes into different avenues when we talk about intimacy. So not just sex, but anything. Do you want somebody that comes in ready, or that you have to teach?
I don't mind teaching. For me, you don't have to come in 100% ready, because 100% ready for one person doesn't mean 100% ready for me. So you could have had another woman and you were emotionally attuned to her, or intimately attuned to her, and then now you're trying to bring that same stuff to me, and it's different strokes for different folks. So I think as long as you are teachable, then I can teach.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm not solely against teaching somebody. However, if I feel like I got to do the leg work and I feel like this is a job, I'm not doing it. And maybe it's because
I'm not doing it. No, get somebody else.
I am just so exhausted, and I think the older I get, the more I'm like, really? You ain't been through enough life experiences to get you where you need to be. I think that there is some aspects of this where I can mold it or have you cater to what I need, yes, but you should have the basics already there. Your kindness should already be there. Your ability to understand or try to understand people or your partner should already be there. You should have already worked through some of this stuff that you got going on, maybe from your past. And sometimes your intimacy deficits don't necessarily have to come from your partner. It could come from your childhood. It could come from your parents. And so if you have not worked through any of that stuff, do not expect for me to clock in to do that for you on my 9 to 5. I have a 9 to 5. I'm not doing it if I got to do too much. I'll give you an outline. That's it.
Not the outline.
The outline. The whole lesson. Get the bullet points.
I mean, I agree with you, Keish. I think that if you have the basics, or like if your character is as far as like being able to teach someone intimacy, if you are naturally a person who has a big ego and you're not really, willing to kind of give or take, it's all about you, then that's going to be hard to teach that person intimacy because they're always going to be thinking about themselves and how does this benefit me. Um, but I do think that as long as they have those basics, they're kind, they're compassionate, and they're willing, I'm open to teaching it. I do think that people who have experienced trauma and haven't worked through it, they do have to have those experiences in order to learn intimacy. So, like, yes, you can go to therapy, for your childhood trauma or adult trauma, but if you don't have those actual experiences with people, then it's going to be hard to relearn that, or to even learn how to be intimate again. So just depending on the level of trauma and where they're at in their healing process, I may be willing to kind of go through that with them and teach them how to be intimate again. But if it's up to the point where like they haven't even tried to start healing and it's something that's real recent, that's where I might be like, no, I'm not here for that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with all of y'all. I don't mind teaching, but you got to come in with the basics, at least at this stage. I think all of us are also speaking from the stage we are in life. Like we are at a stage in life where we too grown, we too old. Like you have to know something. And it's interesting because I'm hearing a lot of people now, well, more so, I've heard this from a lot of women say when they are dating, one of their questions is, have you ever gone to therapy or have you been in therapy? Would you be opposed to it? And it's a lot of women or people in general now who won't date somebody who's never been to therapy or who wouldn't consider going because there are things that everybody needs to work on. And in the area of intimacy, everything that you have gone through impacts your different types of intimacy, everything you've gone through in the past. And for me, the biggest thing is when someone comes into your life and they think they know, like they think they good because every partner before you was cool with it. Like everything somebody else was cool with, I ain't gonna be cool with. So you have to be willing to adjust to me. And that's a matter of, are you teachable? Like you can't come to me and say, well, they ain't have a problem with it before. That's them. I got a problem with it. It don't work for me. So that's my thing. I'm willing to teach, but you can't feel like you already know, like you coming in like an expert. No, you don't. You don't know me.
I also think like the whole going to therapy thing can be weaponized. The whole going to therapy thing can be weaponized. Like I'm noticing a lot of people using terminology or just using things that they don't even understand, and weaponizing therapy has been one of them. So you can go to therapy. That does not mean you've gotten rid of your toxic traits. Because I don't know why you ended therapy. I don't know if you ended therapy because your therapist was ripping you a new one and you didn't like it. Because therapy isn't just about, hey, do this, this, and this. That's not what we do as therapists. We try to help you along the journey so you make your own decisions. And sometimes, even in therapy, some people don't want to make that decision or don't want to get out of the routines and the type of things that they're used to doing because they don't simply want to put in the work. So even if somebody do go to therapy, that doesn't mean that they've gotten rid of all the toxic things that they've, originally went to therapy for.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Listen, you just slapped on something right then and there. Because I just think, like, who are you to be like, have you gone to therapy? Because if you ain't gone to therapy, I can't be with you. Because, like you said, it could be weaponized. You might be in therapy and might not even be in there doing any of the work.
It's true.
And then you asking somebody else, did you go to therapy? If so, I can't be with you, or I can't be intimate with you, or whatever. And then what makes you think that your level of intimacy is acceptable too? Because some people not only have toxic traits, some people only know how to be in a dysfunctional relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be inviting somebody to your dysfunctionality, even though you in therapy and they've been to therapy. Just because you're in therapy don't mean you're doing good work.
That's true. See, I think for some people that question comes from a place of, have you gone or would you be willing to go, comes from a place of, because I'm not going to be your therapist. I'm your partner. I'm not doing that work for you. Don't come to me with certain things. Yes, I'm your support. And I think a lot of people forget that. They forget that, yes, intimacy involves that emotional bonding and being open and being able to communicate, but your partner is not your therapist. So I think that's what some people getting at. Like, I want to know that you would at least talk to somebody because there's certain things that I'm not helping you process because that's not my title. That's not my role. I can't help you with certain things. And so to kind of wrap us up, when it comes to that level of intimacy with somebody, what are the things we want to talk about? What are the things we want the people to know? How do you increase your intimacy? How do you deal with a traumatic past? How do all these things kind of incorporate into the whole realm of intimacy? And that's what we're going to be talking about in our main dish.
At the cookout, you know, we got just what you need. At the cookout, your heart and mind we will be. At the cookout, your peace.
I like to call intimacy intimacy, which in relationships, you are asking somebody to see into your life, to see into your feelings, to see into your emotions, to actually experience all of you. Take all of that in and then give it back to you in a way that's palatable to you and healthy to your relationship. So, let's talk about intimacy, ladies. Before we got on our main dish, it actually said in our hot sauce that we are not willing to have to teach somebody intimacy. Some of us said we're not willing to teach anybody intimacy. Some of us said, you know what, maybe I might teach somebody intimacy. But one thing I would like to point out is that we talked about going to therapy and fixing all your trauma and in order to be able to be intimate. But we didn't talk about going to therapy with your partner. We talked about going to therapy separately. And I think that going to therapy with your partner enhances intimacy. Me and my partner have been to therapy together. And while we wanted to cut each other while we were in there, we left with a deeper and higher level of intimacy.
Agreed. I too have been to therapy with my partner, and I'll say it opens your eyes to different things when you go with your partner. And I know some people feel like, well, y'all should already be sharing everything together anyway, but it's different when it's a third party in front of you that's unbiased and that's kind of giving you tools and things to work with. So for me, I think in any relationship, like you said, intimacy is a part of all relationships. You can also go to therapy with other people in your life that you want to have that strong bond with. Like a friend could be a support in therapy, family member. That's why we do family therapy. So intimacy is interwoven throughout every relationship, and you need it in every relationship. You cannot form strong bonds without it.
Well, I too also went to therapy with my husband. But so it's just like Auntie Keisha was saying, just because you go to therapy doesn't mean you're making any progress or anything. So initially he had a really hard time with understanding what the therapist was meaning by intimacy. He just kept thinking it was sex. Like every time she said that word, for him, it was sex. I need to have more sex with you. And I'm like, no, like that is not what she's saying. So it's really understanding that intimacy is a lot more than just sex. There's
Mhm.
so much more to it. But one of the things that's really important when we're talking about intimacy, especially when we're talking about childhood trauma or just like, what you've observed as a child, that kind of influences how you relate to other people, especially how intimate you are with your partner. So modeling healthy intimacy for children is really helpful. So not really, hiding how you interact with each other. Of course, you ain't having sex in front of your kids, but just like letting kids know that it's okay to get angry, but this is how we talk and comfort each other when we're angry. It's okay to be lovey-dovey and kiss each other and hug each other, just different things like that, but showing your kids that it's okay to be intimate with someone. It doesn't make you weak, especially when it comes to little boys. But that's just something that I wanted to bring up.
Yes, yes. And it's very important to teach kids. I love that you brought up it's okay to hug and kiss and show that to your kids. It's also very important to teach kids that not every touch is sexual. We tend to sexualize a lot of things in this society, and not every touch has to be sexual or has to lead to that. I think for a lot of, especially when you get older kids, like teenagers, they feel like, well, if we hold hands or if we cuddle or if we kiss, it has to lead to this. No, it doesn't. It could just be that, and that's enough, and that could be enough. So it's a good thing to really teach kids all touch is not sexual.
Well, as y'all know, I'm the auntie that's not married. So I have not gone to any type of couples therapy. Have I been in relationships? Yes. but I haven't been in any relationships where I had to go to therapy. Should we have gone to therapy? Probably. But I have not been to therapy or shared therapy space with a partner. But I will say, speaking about intimacy, I think a lot of people miss having emotional intelligence when it comes to intimacy, and that's going to require something probably that's going to cause a little bit of discomfort. And what I mean by that is being intimate with somebody, you have to be vulnerable. Like there has to be some level of vulnerability with this person, because this person may, obviously they're telling you their emotions, they're being open with you, having that open communication, and knowing when your partner is either triggered by something or knowing when your partner is aroused by something. Now, I know a lot of people may use arousal as far as erection, but you can arouse your partner in different ways. And so I think it's just important to understand your partner's not only mind, but also their body. If you are trying to be intimate with somebody, let's just say physically, and they're giving you the stiff arm, or they're not giving you you're not receiving the same warmth and affection, then that should be your cue that my partner may not be in a mental space to give me what I need. So how do I work with my partner, kind of like doing a dance? Like, how do I work with my partner to have them in a space where we can be intimate? And maybe that intimacy isn't going to start off physically. To be emotionally intelligent, sometimes it's not going to start off that way. Sometimes you're going to have to do something else to get that person to that physical part. But a lot of people like to rush in and just do what they want to do because they're so busy trying to get their rocks off that they're not even taking time to get to know their partner. So I think that having emotional intelligence is literally one of the ways to increase the intimacy in your relationship. Now, again, I ain't saying that I ain't been married before, but I do know something about intimacy. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize that different men can provide you different things, ladies. It does not always mean that every man's going to have every single thing that's checked off on your list when it comes to intimacy. Okay? That's just not everybody's going to have everything. So what are the top qualities that you think are important for you when it comes to your intimacy and what arouses you?
Mm-hmm.
That's just my take.
Woo, Tisha, listen. Some
I may
people
be ratchet, but your girl got something over here, okay?
no, that's not even like that's 90% of what you said like is super agreeable, and of the other percentages you talking about not being married. You don't have to be married to have common sense in relationships. So
Thank
You're right. Mm-hmm.
when you
You're right.
say like your partner is going in for the kill and the other person is not emotionally in that space, that's the time to tap into what do they need. So if I'm trying to have sex with you and we're not there, and this is just with sexual intimacy, if I'm trying to have sex with you and it's not working and I'm getting a stiff arm, okay, well, what else might you need? And so that's when you kind of treat your partner like college. Like you're supposed to constantly be learning somebody. So if that person is aroused by conversation, then maybe they haven't gotten enough of that. So if that person's cup is not full, then they're not able to pour into you. So some people can't pour into you because they can't pour into themselves, and then that stunts emotional intimacy. So emotional intimacy stunts physical intimacy.
you.
It's like it's like a ball rolling downhill kind of thing.
I fully agree, and I consistently have couples. I always go over the types of intimacy with couples because if you look it up, you're gonna see things that tell you it's 5 types, 6, 8, 12. It's multiple types of intimacy, no matter where you look it up. But I always go through those types with couples for them to self-assess. Where do you think you are in this area? Because at the end of the day, whether people believe it or not, the sexual intimacy will not sustain a relationship. Period. It won't. On its own, the sex could be great, but it is not. You're not having sex all day. So what are we doing outside of that? Can I talk to you? Do we share interest in hobbies? Do you like to try new things like I do? Are you a foodie? Like all these things matter and actually make that intimacy even better. If the other areas of intimacy are elevated, the sex is going to be better. And I don't think people realize that When you increase in emotional intimacy or creative intimacy or spiritual intimacy, and not spiritual meaning you got to have a certain set of beliefs, but just knowing there's something bigger than y'all, when you increase in those areas, the sex is going to be immaculate at that point because you're open enough to experiment with each other.
I wanted to add, I know that Amber had talked about kids, and I just read a thread the other day about how people struggle to get through their first 2 to 3 years when they first had their children because those things were taken away so fast and they were not ready for it. And I'm gonna be very honest with y'all. I know she'll gonna get on me about me not saying I've not been married, but I have been with partners who lost their parents, and that I had no clue was going to impact our relationship. And so I'm just here to tell you that there are certain life events that are going to happen that may negatively impact your intimacy with your partner. And a lot of people are not prepared for that. I was not prepared, and it literally turned us upside down. So it's important to just realize that when those things are happening, that's when you got to pull together the the hardest. That's when you got to keep it in the hardest, because that's literally gonna tear you down.
Oh,
Partners lost their parents before you guys even got into a relationship, because sometimes when you lose your parents, your emotional intelligence is stunted, and then like you haven't been loved on the way that you could be. Like, somebody loses a mother, then it's difficult for them to engage in those relationships, and where they are emotional, or they have that nurture inside of them, and sometimes it just keeps coming up, like, well, this person didn't have a mother, this person didn't have a father, and that's why they operate like this. Like, getting through that with a partner can either make or break you, because some people are like, I'm losing patience, I don't have time to wait for you to get it together. I know you lost your parent, but right now, in the here and now, this relationship is not working because you won't work through that trauma, and that stunts your intimacy right there.
ooh. Oh, I'm so glad y'all brought that up. Thank you, thank you. Because Keish, you described the type of intimacy with that loss. So crisis intimacy is a thing. Can you go through a crisis with me? Will we be stronger after the crisis, or will it tear us apart? So if you've been through a crisis with somebody and y'all supported each other and understood and tried to, be there for each other, then you'll probably have an even stronger relationship on the other side of that when you're through it. And then Shug, that idea of the loss of parents specifically, it has come up in quite a few different areas for me, especially with some clients. The loss of a parent for somebody when they are young literally gets seen as an abandonment, even though it's not. Logically, they know my parent didn't die on purpose. It still feels like they were abandoned. So now they go into relationships and they either gonna cling to you or they're gonna be afraid to get intimate because they don't want to get that close to somebody out of fear that they're going to lose them. So you have to really, really understand when somebody has had a significant loss in their life and you are trying to build intimacy with them. They might be scared of that. They might be very fearful of that.
Yeah, and I totally get that, Ash, and I get what both of y'all are saying, but I think at some point, like Auntie Shook was saying, like it's no longer an excuse. Like you can't just sit there and stay in your misery because this thing happened to you. Of course, you didn't have any control over whatever the loss or crisis was or whatever the trauma was. At some point, you have to start to do the work to heal, and this goes back to our hot sauce, right? Like I said that I would be willing to teach someone how to be intimate again, or at least to be that person to support them in that, whether it's a friend, whether it's a partner,
Mhm.
as long as you're doing your part in your healing process. So if you're just going to sit there and say for the past 10 years, like, I lost my parent, I lost my parent, and you've been saying that for 10 years and you haven't done anything to try to rebuild intimacy in your relationship since then, at that point, it's like Auntie Shook was saying, I'm losing patience. Like, I'm just not doing it anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a detriment to your intimacy at that point. Like I was saying with the crisis intimacy, if you can't get through that, if y'all can't get to the other side, it's gonna actually affect the relationship, and that can affect, like, to get off of just romantic relationships, that can affect friendships too, friendships, family relationships. If something severe has happened, some type of trauma or some type of crisis, it can affect all those relationships if you don't try to get to the root of that. If you don't try to process through that and work on it, everybody can support you, but at the end of the day, you got to support you. You got to support you too, and you got to do the work.
Yeah, and I just want to, can I
Right.
just quickly clarify, because you know how the internet is and people will take something you said and twist it. I
And
do
they
want to
will.
say I'm not saying that trauma isn't a thing, and I'm not saying that you're going to get over it if you lose a parent or if you experience a traumatic event. I'm just saying that after a certain amount of time, you do have to start with the healing process. You may not ever get over it, but you can start healing and building your intimacy back in those relationships. I just wanted to clarify that. Because y'all
No,
know how
and
people do.
I'm gonna piggyback on that, Amber, because getting over it, getting through it, and getting over it is two different things. You're never gonna get over it, but you can get through it. And some people don't want to get
Mhm.
through it because they hold on to those parts of them because that's their identity. If I get through this, what does that mean? Does that mean I've left that parent behind? Does that mean I forget about it? Does that mean I don't love them anymore? They need to have a definition of what it means to them to get through that loss. And even in friendships, what does it mean to get through trauma? Ashley touched on something big where she said you have to get to the root of the problem. A lot of people want to move on in intimate relationships, including friendships, when they have not gotten to the root of the problem. So you want me to patch it up. You want me to say, oh, y'all getting along today. Everything must be fine. No, we have not worked through anything. We have not gotten to the root of the problem. Nobody's acknowledged their wrong. Nobody's acknowledged their hurts. And the biggest irritant for me is for somebody to not acknowledge what they've done to you or not acknowledge the hurt, but expect you to be over it and just get through it. Because if you love me, then you'll be fine with what I did to you. And that's trash.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you right about that.
that's the quickest way to kill a friendship, an emotional relationship, any kind of relationship is to not work through it, but expect you to be over it. And I think in our community, especially, I'm gonna speak for our community because this community I'm in, right? But in our community, especially, we are phenomenal for hurting somebody and then being like, but what you doing tomorrow? That ain't how this works. You can't
Yep.
do that to people and expect them to just be okay because now you're over it. It
Oh,
takes me a long time to get over stuff. We're gonna have to work through it and then work through it again until I feel like I don't work through it. And so like you can't just hurt people and then just be like, all right then, so we going out to dinner or what? Like it don't work like that.
oh my God, thank you. And you know what? Everything you just said, if you can't, if you gotta sweep things under the rug and just brush it over and say, oh, we going out to eat tomorrow, and we not acknowledge that, then you actually don't have an intimate bond. Because intimacy involves vulnerability, being able to have conflict together, healthy conflict, and get through it, being able to process through things and not sweep anything under the rug. If I can't have an argument or a conflict with you and we get through it, we don't have a strong enough bond. We really don't have the bond that we think we have because everything is not always happy. Intimacy has nothing to do with happiness. It has everything to do with a deep bond.
But it's not even always a bond. You can have a bond with somebody and you still can't get through something because you neither one of y'all have worked through it. So I have to work through my stuff and then you have to work through your stuff. And then we can work together. And we might still be bonded. We might still love each other and all of that, but we ain't worked through this. And I'm not okay with like the way that this is going forward. And so sometimes, you know, I mean, we can have a strong bond, but we can't get through this. Some people are trauma bonded. And them bonds, they ain't got no business being strong, but they are.
And that
You
is
right.
the I was going to end on, is that being careful of trauma bonding. A lot of people confuse intimacy or confuse trauma bonding with intimacy. Just because y'all share a commonality like a death of a parent, maybe a child, a loss of someone, does not mean that that person is compatible for you. And a lot of people get confused by that. And I think it's important to understand, do I like this person because we share a commonality, or do I like this person because they actually fit in my life and they're the piece to my puzzle and they compliment me and they care about me and I'm vulnerable outside of the traumatic event that we both experienced. And I think it's important to know the difference when it comes to that. Because if you move on later in life and you realize that you and this person ain't got nothing in common anymore, it's because y'all never bonded on the right things anyway. You gotta bond when it's right and not when it's out of trauma and tragic.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that y'all enjoyed our episode on intimacy. The aunties tried to give you different perspectives of what it means to engage in different types of intimacy. So hopefully y'all took some nuggets away And we're going to go ahead and let Suge close us out with her question.
All right. So we talked about being intimate. We talked about what it takes to be intimate. Keisha's about to go eat. Amber is about to go laugh because Keisha been funny all night and Ashley needs to sit up. What y'all about to do?
All right, y'all. So, really good hot sauce for today. If Amber can get herself together, she gonna make me laugh. I'm starting over.
The aunties hate when I use this, but intimacy to me means into me see. So, how do...
Don't say shit else funny. Amber already can't get it together. Like,
Oh, but why did you have to get up in the camera?
I'm glad I was looking down.
Look, I'm on mute. Y'all can't hear me. It's okay.
See you still. You're not invisible because you on mute.
I'm about to cuss. Bro, laugh again. Laugh again. Laugh again. You'll be free.
What are you laughing at?
She just flipped. She flipped the script quick.
He in there
Oh
laughing.
my God.
He in there laughing. He's watching reels. He's watching Facebook reels. He know my apartment ain't nothing but a fucking box, and I hear him outside of my damn door cracking up. Anyway, and that's what we have for y'all. What?
This turned into a domestic violence episode. Quick as shit.
You ready? Ashley, sit up. What the hell wrong with you?
You're yelling at me too. Damn. Okay.
Okay.